Seventh day of unleavened bread.
Part 1, the seventh day nobody talks about.
Peace to you, family. If you are sitting here right now on this 8th day of April in the year 2026, you are tuning in to Yah First Ministries with Brother Betsade Lamed Aleph Lamed. And what I am about to break down for you is going to crack open every single thing you thought you understood about the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Most of you sitting in these churches, synagogues, and camps have been fed a watered down, sanitized, surface level reading of this feast that could not be further from the technical reality Yah encoded into it. You have been told to take the yeast out of your house, throw out the bread, eat matzah for 7 days. Real simple, real straightforward, real wrong. Today is the 7th day of this feast, and today is the day almost nobody talks about because what it actually means terrifies the false teachers and destroys their whole system. But the Most High did not hide the truth from us. He encoded it, and it is time to unpack what is really going on here. Here is what we are covering today across all 3 parts of this episode. In part 1, we are going to break down the technical meaning of the 7th day of unleavened bread, what it actually represents, and why the serpent seed gatekeepers keep their mouths shut about it. We are going to look at the engineering underneath the feast itself, the Paleo-Hebrew that Yah used to describe it, and the symbolic architecture that reveals the power structure the Most High encoded. In part 2, we are going to examine what happened to Israel historically on feast days like this one, and how the pattern repeats. And in part 3, we are going to show you how this day connects to prophecies about Israel's future redemption and what it means for your life right now. This is not some dusty religious holiday. This is a cron job running critical prophetic software that the Most High scheduled into the calendar of creation itself. Let us dig in. Niggle. The surface level lie that keeps you enslaved. Listen to me straight. Most of the pastors, rabbis, teachers, and camp leaders teaching on the Feast of Unleavened Bread are teaching you a children's story instead of the technical manual. They stand up there with their nice voices and say, "Oh family, the Feast of Unleavened Bread commemorates when Yah brought Israel out of Egypt in haste. So we removed the yeast from our homes as a symbol of removing sin." Bullshit. That is not technical truth. That is religious decoration designed to make the feast feel accessible and manageable to people who have been stripped of their real spiritual foundation. And you know why they teach it that way? Because if they taught you the real meaning, if they showed you that this feast is about the complete transformation and purification of your consciousness, your bloodline, your identity, and your dominion on this earth, you would suddenly realize you have been operating with corrupted source code your entire life. You would stop tithing to their institutions. You would stop sitting under their false authority. You would go home and start studying for yourself. The Feast of Unleavened Bread is not about physical yeast in your physical house. That interpretation is the kindergarten version. The feast is about spiritual yeast, the doctrinal leaven, the false teachings, the corruption that has infected your mind, your soul, and your very understanding of who you are. Yod He Wah Shin Ayin himself said this explicitly in the New Testament, and almost every teacher glosses right over it because it destroys their entire theological system. Take heed and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of the Sadducees. Matthew chapter 16, verse 6. The disciples thought he was talking about bread. They literally thought, "Oh, the master is upset because we forgot to bring bread, and he is giving us a spiritual warning about something unrelated." Wrong. Listen to what happened next. Then understood they how that he bade them not beware of the leaven of bread, but of the doctrine of the Pharisees and of the Sadducees. Matthew chapter 16, verse 11. Doctrine. He was warning them about doctrine. The leaven is not yeast. The leaven is false teaching. The leaven is serpent seed doctrine that puffs you up, inflates your ego with false knowledge, and makes you think you are following Yah when you are actually following men. The Pharisees had doctrine leaven. They had taken the Torah of Yah and corrupted it with their traditions, their commentaries, their endless rules and regulations designed to keep Israel under their control. That is what the leaven represents. Now look at what the Apostle Kaf Aleph P Aleph said about this in his first letter. Purge out therefore the old leaven, that ye may be a new lump, as ye are unleavened. For even Christ, our Passover, is sacrificed for us. Therefore, let us keep the feast, not with old leaven, neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 7 through 8. Do you see what he just said? The old leaven equals false doctrine, malice, wickedness. The unleavened bread equals sincerity and truth. This is not about getting rid of your sourdough starter. This is about purging your mind and your understanding of every false doctrine you have been fed. This is about replacing every lie with truth, every corrupted teaching with the authentic word, every serpent seed doctrine with the real blueprint from Yah. The seventh day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, today, represents the completion of that purging process. If the 7 days represent a complete cycle, a full week of removing leaven from your life, then day 7 is when the transformation is finished. You have spent all week identifying false teachings, throwing them out, and rebuilding your foundation on truth. On the 7th day, the work is complete. You are no longer operating on corrupted software. You have a clean system. The engineering layer, what the Most High actually built. Now here is where the false teachers really start sweating, because we are about to get into the technical reality of what Yah encoded into this feast day. And I need you to understand something fundamental about how the Most High communicates through Scripture. He does not waste words. He does not include random details. Every number, every name, every specific word choice is engineering data. It is Yah leaving his fingerprints on the design so you can decode it. The Feast of Unleavened Bread is 7 days. 7. Let us break down what 7 means in the symbolic architecture of Scripture. The number 7 in the Paleo-Hebrew system represents completion and perfection. It is the number of completion of a cycle. 6 is the number of man, imperfect, needing work. But 7 is when the work is done. On the 7th day, Yah rested from his creation work because the work was complete and perfect. When you see 7 days, you are looking at a full cycle with a definite endpoint. The 7 days of unleavened bread, therefore, represent a complete and total removal of doctrinal leaven from Israel. Not partial purging, not surface cleaning, complete. By day 7, the process is finished. The old corrupted understanding is gone. The new truth-based foundation is in place. That is what today represents. Now let us look at the structure of the feast itself. You have 7 days, but listen to what Yah said about it in the book of Leviticus. In the first day there shall be an holy convocation. Ye shall do no manner of servile work therein, but ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord 7 days. Leviticus chapter 23, verses 6 through 8. Wait, stop right there. He says you shall offer an offering made by fire for 7 days. Fire represents judgment, purification, and refining in the symbolic language of Scripture. Fire burns away what is impure and leaves what is precious. When you refine gold, you put it in fire and the impurities burn away, leaving pure gold. This is exactly what the feast represents, a 7-day process where fire, symbolic judgment and purification, burns away the old leaven, false doctrine, corruption, spiritual impurity, and leaves behind what is pure and true. And here's where the engineering gets deep. The Feast of Unleavened Bread is directly connected to the Passover. They happen back to back. Passover is one day, and then unleavened bread runs for 7 more days. Let me show you the design. Passover equals the blood covenant activation. Yod-Heh Wash and Ayin's blood is the seal that protects you. The angel of death passes over your house because the blood is marked on the doorposts. This is the authentication protocol. Your credentials, the blood, grant you access to salvation. Unleavened bread days 1 through 7 equals the purification cycle. Once you are authenticated through the blood, you spend the next 7 days purging every false doctrine, every corrupted teaching, every lie that you have been fed. You are rebooting your entire belief system on clean code. This is like a computer system architecture. You authenticate yourself, the blood/Passover, and then you run a system scan to find and remove malware, the 7 days of removing leaven. The 7th day is when the scan is complete and the system is clean and optimized and ready to run the real applications you were meant to run. The Paleo-Hebrew breakdown. The letters tell the story. Now I need to show you something in the original Paleo-Hebrew that will make your jaw drop about what the Most High was saying when he named this feast and set these dates. The feast is called the Feast of Unleavened Bread in English, but what is the actual Hebrew concept? The word for unleavened is masa, and when we break this down to the Paleo-Hebrew letters, here's what we see. Mem, Sadeh, He equals the letters that make up Matzah. Let me translate the pictographic meaning of each letter. Mem equals the shape of water, the pictograph of chaos, mighty waters, flow, represents disorder that must be structured. Sadeh equals the shape of a fish hook or hunting weapon, represents catching, hooking, capturing something, bringing something under control. He equals the window, the opening, the breath, revelation. What has been hidden is now revealed. So the word itself, the very letters Yah chose to describe this bread, tells you unleavened bread is the process of taking the mighty waters of chaos, corrupted teachings and false doctrine, hooking and capturing them and bringing them under control so that revelation can occur. The unleavened bread is what you eat during this process, but the bread itself in the Paleo-Hebrew is lechem, lamed, het, mem. Lamed equals the pointed staff, the symbol of authority and teaching and direction, what is pointing you, guiding you, teaching you. Chet equals defense, or enclosure, or boundary, separation and division, what divides the holy from the unholy. Mem equals waters, chaos, mighty power, order that flows. So the bread you eat equals divine authority, lamed, that creates separation and division, chet, through mighty flowing order, mem. When you eat the unleavened bread during this feast, you are literally consuming the symbol of eating divine teaching that separates truth from lies and orders your mind according to Yah's flow. This is not random word choice. This is architecture. This is Yah encoding his engineering into the very letters he gave to describe the process. Why the 7th day terrifies the false teachers. Here is what breaks the entire system of every false teacher, every camp, every institution that profits from keeping Israel confused and leaderless. The 7th day of unleavened bread represents the moment when Israel's transformation is complete and she is ready to take dominion. Think about the structure of what happened in Egypt. Israel was enslaved. They were under Pharaoh's authority. They had corrupted their own bloodline through generations of captivity. Their minds were colonized. Their identity was gone. They did not even know who they were. But then what happened? Passover came. The blood was applied. The angel of death passed over. And Israel was set free from physical Egypt. But, and this is critical, they did not just walk out and immediately take the promised land. What did they do instead? They spent 7 years wandering in the wilderness. During those 7 years, the old generation died off. The generation born in slavery, the ones whose minds had been shaped by Egyptian philosophy and Egyptian bondage, they died. And a new generation, born in freedom, raised knowing the Torah, shaped by the Most High, came of age. The Feast of Unleavened Bread is the accelerated version of that 7-year purification. It is the spiritual principle compressed into 7 days. Day 1 through 6, you are removing the old leaven. Day 7, the transformation is complete. The old mindset is gone. The new foundation is set, and you are ready. Why does this terrify the false teachers? Because if Israel understood what day 7 actually meant, they would realize that the entire period of captivity is coming to an end. The false teachers, the fake rabbis, the corrupt pastors, the denominational system, the entire apparatus that has kept Israel in spiritual slavery would be obsolete. On the 7th day of unleavened bread, Israel's consciousness transforms. And when Israel's consciousness transforms, she cannot be controlled anymore. She cannot be lied to anymore. She cannot be colonized anymore. The 7th day is the day when the leaven is finally gone. Not just from your house, from your mind. And when the leaven is gone from your mind, you can think clearly for the first time. You can see the lies. You can see the system. You can see what has been done to you. And you can start planning your liberation. That is why you hear nothing about the 7th day in the false churches. They skip right over it. They skip right over what it means. They want you thinking about unleavened bread as a quaint little historical reenactment instead of a prophetic activation that is supposed to happen in your consciousness right now. Listen, we are living in the days when this is supposed to happen. This is the time when Israel is supposed to be going through the final purging cycle. This is the generation where the old leaven is supposed to die completely and the new foundation is supposed to be fully established. The fact that you have teachers telling you to ignore the 7th day or to treat it like just another day of the feast is evidence that they are invested in keeping you enslaved to the old corrupted system. The connection that changes everything. Now I want to show you something that ties today, the 7th day of unleavened bread, in 2026 to something massive that is coming in prophecy. And this is where you see the master engineer's hand so clearly that you cannot deny it. The 7th day of unleavened bread is also called Shmini Atzeret in some traditions, which means the 8th day assembly, the solemn assembly. But that is a layer on top of the original meaning. The core meaning is that day 7 is when the cycle is complete. Now remember what I said earlier about the pattern. Passover happens once. Then you have 7 days of purification. That is the structure. 1 day of blood authentication, then 7 days of purification. 8 days total if you count them together. In the symbolic language of scripture, 8 represents new beginning and resurrection. 7 is completion. 8 is what comes after completion, the new thing that starts because the old thing is finished. So the structure is blood authentication 1 plus complete purification cycle 7 equals new beginning 8. This is the engineering blueprint for Israel's end times transformation. After the final days of purification, when the 7th day is complete and the leaven is gone, what comes next? The 8th day, the new beginning, the resurrection of Israel into her true identity and her dominion. The false teachers do not want you to understand this because they do not want you to expect a new beginning. They want you thinking everything stays the same, everything stays broken, everything stays colonized. But the Most High has a different plan. What is coming in part 2 will show you how this pattern repeats throughout Israel's history and how it is accelerating right now in this generation. We are going to look at what actually happened at the Passover in Egypt, what the feast really commemorates, and why the serpent seed has worked so hard to hide the technical meaning from you. The engineering layer of this feast is not just symbolism, it is a prophecy about Israel's liberation that is supposed to happen in your lifetime. Part 2, the fire that burns false teaching away. So we closed out part 1 with the reality. The 7th day is when the cycle is complete and Israel's consciousness is supposed to transform. The false teachers keep their mouths shut about this day because they know what it means. But Yah did not encode this pattern into the calendar and then hide the blueprint from his people. He left the clues everywhere. And right now, in this part, we are going to dig into the historical pattern, how this 7-day purification cycle shows up in Israel's story over and over again, and why the enemy is terrified of what happens when you actually understand the engineering underneath it. The pattern that repeats from Egypt to right now. Listen to me. This is the kind of truth that will change how you read your entire Bible. Most of you have been taught to see the Feast of Unleavened Bread as a historical commemoration, like you are supposed to remember something that happened once in Egypt and then move on. Wrong. Dead wrong. What Yah encoded into this feast is not a historical memory. It is a prophetic template. It is a cron job running on the calendar of creation, executing the same 7-day purification cycle over and over again whenever his people are ready to be liberated from spiritual captivity. Let me show you the pattern. First time, Egypt. Israel was in bondage. Their minds were colonized by Egyptian doctrine and Egyptian thinking. They had been there so long, they were starting to forget who they were. Then what happened? The Passover came. The blood was applied. The angel of death passed over, and Israel was set free. Then came 7 days of unleavened bread. 7 days to purge out the old leaven. 7 days to burn away the Egyptian worldview, the Egyptian traditions, the Egyptian mindset that had infected everything about how they thought. But here's what the false teachers do not want you to understand. After those 7 days were complete, Israel did not immediately walk into the promised land and set up a government and start ruling. Wrong. What happened next? The wilderness. 40 years. And you know what 40 represents? Testing, trial, purification through ordeal. The old generation, the ones whose minds had been shaped by slavery, whose bones carried the vibration of captivity, those people died in the wilderness. They were purged out. And a new generation, born in freedom, raised on the Torah, shaped by the Most High himself through 40 years of direct instruction. That generation walked into the promised land ready to take dominion. The pattern is blood off the Kenik to doctrinal with weak. The pattern is blood off the Kenik to doctrinal for the weak. The pattern is blood off the Kenik to doctrinal for the weak. 7 days of unleavened bread to testing and trial, wilderness, to new generation ready for dominion, entering Canaan. That is the blueprint. That is what Yah encoded into the calendar. And now listen, this pattern is not just about Egypt. It repeats throughout history. The Babylon connection, the second captivity, Fast forward 700 years. Israel is now in Babylon. And you want to know something that will blow your mind? The Babylonian captivity did not just happen because Nebuchadnezzar had a good army. No, the Babylonian captivity was the judgment of Yah himself. Why? Because Israel had forgotten the Torah. They had replaced it with false doctrines. They had mixed with foreign nations. They had allowed serpent seed teaching to infect their understanding. They were spiritually in captivity before Nebuchadnezzar ever came to the gates. So what did Yah do? He allowed them to go into physical captivity, so they would be forced to purge out the spiritual captivity. 70 years in Babylon. And then what happened? Zerubbabel led a remnant back. The people who came back, they were changed. The false doctrines had been burned out of them. They were ready to rebuild. But, and this is critical, the Babylonian captivity was not just about 7 years like Egypt. It was 70 years. Why 70? Because 7 is completion, and 70, 7 times 10, represents complete cycles multiplied. Israel went through not one 7-day purification. They went through 70 cycles of testing and purging. 10 complete cycles, 10 representing completion through all the nations. By the end of 70 years, the old generation was dead. The new generation had been born in captivity, but they had learned the Torah from their parents, and they came back ready. The pattern repeated, same blueprint, different length, different context, but the same engineering principle. Bondage to judgment, to forced purification, to emergence of new generation. The spiritual mechanics, why this cycle must happen. Now I need to show you why this cycle is not optional. This is not Yah being mean to his people. This is necessary engineering. And to understand it, you have to understand something about how consciousness itself is structured. When you are born into a system of lies, when your mind has been programmed from childhood with false doctrines, false history, false identity, their programming does not just vanish because you hear the truth. No, the old neural pathways are entrenched. The old beliefs are calcified. They have roots that go deep. To purge them out, you need fire. You need testing. You need pressure that forces you to choose. Do I keep believing what is comfortable, or do I embrace what is true? This is why the 7 days are so critical. 7 days of removing leaven is not enough time to completely reprogram a mind. 7 days is just the beginning of the process. But those 7 days are the initiation. They are the moment when you say, I am going to start the purging process. I am going to begin to question everything I thought I knew. I am going to begin to replace lies with truth. And here is where it gets real. Most people do not continue after those 7 days. They do the surface cleaning. They throw out the old books. They skip church for a week. They feel like they did something. But then what? They go right back into the same corrupted environments. The same friends who believe the lies. The same family members who defend the false doctrines. The same neighborhoods where the old way of thinking is reinforced every single day. That is why the wilderness comes next. That is why casting is necessary. Because you cannot stay in an environment that is contaminated and expect the purification to stick. You have to be separated from the source of corruption. You have to be tested with pressure situations where you have to choose based on your new understanding, not your old programming. Breaking down the 7-day architecture, word by word. Now let me show you something in the Paleo Hebrew that will make you understand the engineering of these 7 days at a level nobody is talking about. The command to keep the feast is spelled out in Exodus chapter 12, verse 15. Let me read it. 7 days shall ye eat unleavened bread. Even the first day ye shall put away leaven out of your houses. For whosoever eateth leavened bread from the first day until the seventh day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. Watch what that says. From the first day until the seventh day. 7 days. Not 6, not 8, 7. And in those 7 days, the command is explicit. Put away leaven, but not just remove it. The word used is destroy it. The Hebrew is bior, which comes from the root bet aleph resh. Bet equals the tent or dwelling, the interior space, what is inside the house. Aleph equals strength, the leader, the chief, what is foremost. Resh equals the head, the beginning, what comes first. Read it left to right. Put away the strength that dwells inside first, meaning the foundational corruption that has taken root in your core. This is not surface cleaning. This is root removal. This is finding the corrupted foundation of how you think and demolishing it. And then there is the seventh day. The command about it is in Exodus chapter 12, verse 16. And in the first day, there shall be an holy convocation. And in the seventh day, there shall be an holy convocation to you. No manner of work shall be done in them, save that which every man must eat. That only may be done of you. A holy convocation. Mikra Kodesh in Hebrew. Mem, Kaf, Resh, Aleph, and Kaf, Dalet, Shin. Mem equals water, the flow of chaos and power. Kaf equals the back of the head, what is hidden, the mysteries. Resh equals the head, first, the chief. Aleph equals strength, leadership, what is chief. Plus, Kaf equals the mysteries, what is hidden. Dalet equals the door, the opening, the gateway. Shin equals teeth that consume, what devours and destroys. Together, an assembly of the mysteries, where hidden strength is revealed and what is destroyed is consumed by the gateway opening. Meaning, on the seventh day, what was hidden about your false doctrine is exposed and revealed. The gateway opens, the mysteries are shown, and what needs to die is finally consumed by the fire of truth. The real firstborn connection, why blood matters. Now I want to show you something that ties the Feast of Unleavened Bread to something even deeper in Scripture that will make you understand what today, the seventh day, really represents in terms of consequence and judgment. The Passover is about blood, the blood on the doorpost. The angel of death passes over. But do you know what happens the day after the Passover? The night Pharaoh realizes his firstborn is dead, what is his response? Let me read Exodus chapter 12, verse 31. And he called for Mem, Shin, He, and Aleph, Resh, He, Nun by night, and said, Rise up and get you forth from among my people, both ye and the children of Israel, and go, serve Yod, He, Waw, He, as ye have said. Pharaoh releases Israel, not because he believed, not because he understood the power of Yah, because he was terrified. His firstborn was dead. Every household in Egypt had dead. The screaming was echoing through the streets, and Pharaoh realized this God is real, and he has no mercy for those who refuse to let his people go. But here is what is crazy. Pharaoh did not fully repent. He did not understand the spiritual meaning of what was happening. He just knew that the power of Yah was real and too strong to resist. So what happened? Israel left. The 7 days of unleavened bread began. And then what? Pharaoh's heart hardened again. Why? Because he never did the 7-day purification. He never purged out his false understanding. He just got scared temporarily and let the slaves go. So Yah sent the locusts, sent the hail, sent the darkness. He kept testing Pharaoh's heart to see if the 7-day purification would stick. Would Pharaoh's understanding be transformed, or would his old leaven resurface? Every single time, Pharaoh's false beliefs came back. He did not do the purification. He did not burn away his worldview. He just had a moment of fear. So what was the final judgment? The Red Sea. Pharaoh and his entire army drowned. Why? Because they refused the purification. They refused to let the old leaven burn away. So Yah burned it away by destroying them. This is the pattern. If you refuse the 7-day purification willingly, the judgment comes involuntarily, and it is final. The false teacher's dilemma. Why they hate this teaching. Now listen, I need to explain why the false teachers are so desperate to keep people from understanding what the 7th day actually means. It is not because they are stupid. It is not because they missed it. It is because they understand it, and they know that if Israel understands it, the false teacher's entire control system collapses. Think about it. The 7th day represents the moment when the transformation is complete and Israel is ready for what comes next, ready for new leadership, ready to question the false authorities who have been controlling them, ready to think for themselves instead of accepting whatever the priests and the pastors and the rabbis tell them. When Israel is in the first 6 days of the purification cycle, she is vulnerable. She is still half asleep. She is still confused about what is true and what is false. She is desperate for guidance. And who steps in to fill that vacuum? The false teachers. They set themselves up as the interpreters of what is real. They tell you what the feast means. They tell you what the Torah says. They tell you what Yah wants. And because you are in transition, because you are trying to figure things out, you listen to them. You submit to their authority. But when the 7th day comes, when the purification cycle is complete, when Israel's consciousness has transformed, that is when the false teachers lose their power over you, because you are no longer confused. You are no longer looking for someone to tell you what is real. You know what is real. Your mind is clean. Your foundation is on truth, not on what some punk-ass pastor told you to believe. So the false teachers have a choice. They can either repent and teach the real doctrine, or they can attack the teaching and try to suppress it. What do? They suppress it. They tell people that the 7th day is just like the other days. They tell people that the feast is just about removing physical yeast. They tell people that it is just a historical commemoration we do to remember Egypt. Anything to keep people from understanding that the 7th day is the transformation point where their consciousness awakens and they stop needing the false teachers. And here's the evil part. Some of them know the truth and they deliberately lie about it because the lie serves their system of control. A pastor who makes money off of keeping you confused and dependent is not going to teach you something that makes you independent and awakened. The money dries up. The authority dries up. The influence dries up. This is what Yud Hey Waw Shanann was warning about when he said in Luke chapter 12 verse 1, "Beware ye of the leaven of the Pharisees, which is hypocrisy." Hypocrisy. They know the truth. They teach the opposite. They know the 7th day is about transformation. They teach that it is just a day to eat matzah. They know the feast is about burning away false doctrine. They teach that it is about remembering history. The hypocrisy is not ignorance. It is deliberate deception. What happened on the 7th day in Egypt? The real story. Now I want to break down exactly what happened on that 7th day in Egypt and why it matters to what is happening right now in this generation. Israel had come out of Egypt. They had the blood on the doorposts. They had been spared from the death angel. The first 6 days of unleavened bread were days of transition. They were still in Egypt, still surrounded by Egyptian culture, still hearing the screams of Egyptians mourning their dead. They were physically free, but mentally still partially bound by the system they had just escaped from. But on the 7th day, On the seventh day, Israel was supposed to have a holy convocation, a sacred assembly. They were supposed to gather. They were supposed to collectively recognize that the old way was dead and they were now part of a new people under the covenant of Yah. And here is what is crazy. On that seventh day, Pharaoh did not come after them. The army was still pursuing them from behind. That happens after the feast days. But on the seventh day itself, there was a pause, a moment where Israel could breathe, a moment where they could gather and understand what had just happened to them. But the seventh day was also the moment when Israel fully understood the cost of the plagues. They understood that Yah had destroyed Egypt to set them free. They understood that the false gods of Egypt were powerless. They understood that they could never go back. The old life was gone. The old way of thinking was destroyed. The old identity as slaves was erased. The seventh day was the moment of no return. It was the moment when the transformation became irreversible. And then, immediately after the seventh day was over, what happened? The Red Sea. Pharaoh came after them. The army was right on their heels. And at the Red Sea, Yah did something final. He drowned the old power structure. The chains that held Israel, broken. The army that could have recaptured them, dead. The system that enslaved them, destroyed completely. The Red Sea was the eruption that happened because the seventh day marked the completion of the purification. The Red Sea as judgment on the false system. Listen, the Red Sea is not just a historical event. It is a symbol of what happens when the false system tries to recapture people who have been purified on the seventh day. The Red Sea represents judgment on anything that tries to drag you back into the old leaven after you have been purged and transformed. Pharaoh represents the spirit of every false power structure, every false teacher, every false doctrine, every false authority that wants to enslave your mind. And when that spirit tries to come back and reclaim what it has lost, it drowns in the Red Sea. It is destroyed. That is the pattern. The seventh day of purification is complete. The transformation is final. And then the judgment comes on everything that refuses to let go, on everything that wants to drag Israel back into bondage. Why this matters for your life right now. Now let me bring this home to what is happening today, right now, on this seventh day of unleavened bread in April of 2026. You have been told your entire life that you are worthless. You have been told that your people have no history, no glory, no future. You have been told that the Bible is not for you. You have been told to accept your position at the bottom of every society where you were scattered. You have been given false doctrines about who you are and where you came from. Your mind has been colonized with lies. That is the first 6 days. That is the purification cycle that is still happening right now in this generation. More and more of our people are waking up. More and more are asking questions. More and more are studying the Torah for themselves instead of accepting what the false teachers tell them. The leaven is being burned away. The old understanding is dying. But we are not done yet. We are approaching the seventh day. This is the moment when the complete transformation happens. This is when the old way dies completely and the new way emerges. This is when Israel's consciousness shifts from captivity to dominion. And you can feel it coming. You can feel the energy shifting. The false teachers are getting more desperate. The lies are getting more obvious. The control systems are getting more visible because the seventh day is close. The transformation is almost complete. When the seventh day is complete, when this generation's purification cycle finishes, the Red Sea moment comes next. The judgment on every false system that tried to hold us back. The destruction of every false doctrine that tried to keep us enslaved. The drowning of every enemy that tried to recapture us. And in part 3, we are going to get into exactly what that Red Sea moment looks like in prophecy and what it means for how you are supposed to be living and preparing right now. Part 3, when the seventh day breaks the system wide open. So we have come to the moment of reckoning, when all the leaven that has been burned away through this 6-day cycle finally reaches its end. The old foundation is demolished. The false doctrine is ashes. And on this 7th day, the transformation that the Most High encoded into the calendar of creation itself becomes complete and irreversible. The moment when everything changes. Listen to what Yah said through the prophet Amos about a principle that runs through all of his judgments. Surely the Lord God will do nothing, but he revealeth his secret unto his servants, the prophets. Amos chapter 3, verse 7. Before Yah executes judgment, he reveals it. He sends the warning. He shows his people what is coming. In the 7th day of unleavened bread, today is that revelation moment. This is when the secret is shown. This is when what has been hidden in plain sight is finally exposed. For 6 days, Israel has been going through the purification process. 6 days of removing leaven, burning away false doctrine, questioning everything they have been taught by the false teachers. But on day 7, on this day, something shifts. The work is complete. The purification cycle has finished. And what emerges from that completion is not just a cleaner mind. It is a fundamentally transformed consciousness that can never go back to sleep. Do you understand what that means? The old leaven cannot reinfect a mind that has consciously burnt it away. Once you have seen the lie, you cannot unsee it. Once you have traced the corruption back to its source, you cannot pretend it was not there. On the 6th day, you are still fighting the old patterns. But on the 7th day, when the cycle is complete, you are living in the new foundation. You are not struggling anymore. You have arrived. And that is what terrifies the false teachers more than anything else. The technical architecture of the 7th day transformation. Now let me break down the engineering of what happens in consciousness when the 7th day of purification is complete. This is where the master engineer's fingerprints are all over the structure. The number 6 represents work, effort, striving. It is the number of man in his incomplete state, not yet perfected, still laboring. 6 is production and effort. But what happens on the 7th day? The work stops, the laboring ends, and completion is manifest. In the first book of the Bible, what did Yah do on the 7th day? And on the 7th day, God ended his work, which he had made. And he rested on the 7th day from all his work, which he had made. Genesis chapter 2, verse 2. Rested. Why? Because the work was complete. The creation was finished. Every system was in place. Every detail was set. And on the 7th day, the work transitioned from active creation to passive observation. The Creator rested because there was nothing more to do. Everything was already made. Now apply that same principle to the consciousness of Israel during the 7 days of unleavened bread. Days 1 through 6 equals work, active purging of false doctrine, conscious effort to identify and burn away the leaven. The mind is laboring. The soul is fighting against old programming. You are striving to replace lies with truth. Day 7 equals rest. The work is done. You do not need to labor anymore. The foundation is set. The new way of thinking is established. And now you can rest in that new reality. You have transitioned from striving into being, from doing the work into being the completed result. This is profound. This is technical. This is the engineering principle that Yah built into the calendar itself. And here is where it gets real. When Israel's consciousness completes the seventh day transformation, she is ready for what comes next. She is no longer weak and confused and dependent on false teachers. She is strong. She is clear. She is autonomous. She can think for herself. She can read the scripture and understand it. She can recognize serpent seed doctrine on sight because she has spent 6 days burning away the conditioning that masked it from her. When Israel reaches the 7th day of her purification as a people, she becomes dangerous to the system of control. The Red Sea eruption, what happens when the system tries to reclaim you. Now I want to show you something that will make your blood run cold when you understand what it means prophetically. We talked about Egypt in part 2, how after the 7 days of unleavened bread, Pharaoh returned. His heart hardened again. He tried to reclaim Israel. His army pursued them to the Red Sea. And at that moment, at the exact moment when the 7 days purification cycle was complete and Israel's consciousness had been transformed, Yah did something final. He drowned the entire pursuing army in the Red Sea. Why is that detail critical? Because the Red Sea represents what happens when the false system tries to drag back into captivity someone who has completed the 7-day transformation. The Pharaoh is the spirit of every enslaving power. The army is the force that tries to recapture what it has lost. But when it pursues people whose consciousness has awakened on the 7th day, the Most High destroys it. The Pharaoh did not get a third chance. The army was not given an opportunity to negotiate or retreat. The waters closed over them and they drowned, every last one of them. Why? Because at that point, the grace period was over. The purification cycle was complete. The transformation was irreversible. And any power that tried to reclaim what had been set free was erased. This is the pattern, family, and it is repeating right now in this generation. Israel's consciousness is going through a 7-day purification cycle. The leaven is being burned away. False doctrines are dying. The old programming is breaking, and we are approaching the moment when that cycle will be complete. When the 7th day arrives for our people as a collective body, the transformation will be irreversible. And this is when you need to pray and prepare. Then the Pharaoh returns. Then the system tries to reclaim what it lost. Then the false teachers get desperate and they come at us harder. Then the nations try to reassert control. Then the machinery of oppression tries to drag Israel back into the captivity she has just escaped. And at that moment, Yah drowns it all in the Red Sea. The old powers are destroyed. The oppressive systems are erased. The false authorities are gone because they tried to reclaim a people whose consciousness had completed the 7-day transformation and was no longer enslaved. The blueprint of judgment, why the serpent seed system must fall. Now listen, I want to show you the technical reason why every false system that has ever enslaved Israel has been systematically destroyed by the Most High. And I need you to understand that this is not random. This is not chaotic. This is engineering. This is the master engineer executing the code he compiled from the beginning. Look at what the Most High said through the prophet Isaiah about the end game of every kingdom that enslaves Israel. The burden of Egypt. Behold, the Lord rideth upon a swift cloud, and shall come into Egypt, and the idols of Egypt shall be moved at his presence, and the heart of Egypt shall melt in the midst of it. Isaiah chapter 19, verse 1. Now read that in the Hebrew concept. Swift cloud. That is not just poetic language. That is describing rapid judgment, overwhelming force that cannot be escaped or negotiated with. The idol shall be moved. The false gods shall be shaken from their pedestals. The heart shall melt. The will to resist shall be obliterated. When the Most High brings judgment on the system that enslaves his people, it is not a gradual thing. It is not something that takes centuries and you can debate about. It is swift. It is overwhelming. It is complete. Now watch what Yah told Jeremiah about the principle that runs through all systems that oppress Israel. For I will punish the king of Babylon and his land, as I have punished the king of Assyria. Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 18. What is Yah saying here? That the same punishment he gave to Assyria when she oppressed Israel, he will give to Babylon. And the same principle applies to every nation that has ground Israel under their heel. Oppression of Israel equals guaranteed judgment and destruction. This is not negotiable. This is not conditional on whether that nation is strong or rich or powerful. Yah does not care about your military might. Yah does not care about your economy. Yah does not care about your alliances. If you have oppressed the covenant people of the Most High, your destruction is written. The Egyptians oppressed Israel for 400 years. Yah sent 10 plagues that demolished their entire civilization. Their economy collapsed. Their livestock died. Their fields burned. Their firstborn was slaughtered. Their army drowned in the Red Sea, and Egypt never recovered their dominance. They became a secondary power forever after. Their glory was gone. The Assyrians conquered the northern kingdom and scattered Israel across their empire. What happened to Assyria? Yah sent one angel who killed 185,000 Assyrian soldiers in a single night. One night, the empire collapsed. The Babylonians held Judah in captivity for 70 years. What happened? Yah raised up Cyrus and the Medo-Persian Empire to conquer Babylon. Babylon became desolate. The empire that thought it would rule forever was erased. The Greeks tried to assimilate Israel and forced them to abandon Torah. What happened? The Maccabees rose up and slaughtered them. The Greek Empire that thought it would last forever was broken. The Romans crucified the Messiah and tried to erase Israel from the earth. What happened? Yah allowed the Romans to destroy Jerusalem once to teach Israel a lesson. But then Rome itself was torn apart by internal collapse, invasions, and eventually the empire disintegrated into nothing. Rome is gone. She never rose to that height again. This is the pattern. Oppression of Israel equals automatic judgment. Not maybe, not perhaps, guaranteed. Now look at what the Most High said through Obadiah about the principle of how Yah handles nations. For the day of the Lord is upon all the heathen. As thou hast done, it shall be done unto thee. Thy reward shall return upon thine own head. Obadiah, verse 15. Your reward shall return upon your own head. What you sowed into Israel, Yah will reap back into you, multiplied. Every drop of Israelite blood that has been spilled, every humiliation, every theft of identity, every century of oppression, all of it is being recorded. All of it is being tracked. And when the judgment comes, it will be proportional to what was done to Israel. And right now, in this generation, Israel's consciousness is completing a seventh-day transformation. The leaven is burning away. The false doctrines are dying. The identity is being reclaimed. The people are waking up. And the systems that have enslaved Israel for centuries are terrified because they know what comes next. When the seventh day is complete, the Red Sea comes. When Israel's consciousness is transformed, judgment on the oppressors is swift and total and irreversible. Why the false teachers cannot stop this. Now I need to address something that is absolutely critical to understand. The false teachers know what is coming. They can read the same scriptures you can read. They understand that when the seventh day arrives, their system is finished. And that is why they are getting more desperate, more aggressive, more outright deceptive. They are gambling on one last play. They are gambling that they can keep Israel confused and asleep long enough that she never completes the seventh day transformation. If they can extend the cycle indefinitely, if they can keep people striving on days 4 and 5 and 6 without ever reaching day 7, then the purification never finishes, the consciousness never completes, and the transformation never arrives. But here is what breaks their entire plan. Yah has set the calendar. He has encoded the cycle into creation itself. And no amount of false teaching can override the cosmic engineering that the master engineer put in place. The feast days come, whether the false teachers teach them correctly or not. The Sabbath cycles come, whether they tell people to keep it or not. The 7-year cycles come, whether they pretend they do not matter or not. Yah has set the rhythm, and creation is keeping time, whether the serpent seed likes it or not. And here is the part that will make these bastards scream when they finally understand it. The very fact that they are keeping their mouths shut about the seventh day is proof that the transformation is real and it is coming. If the seventh day did not matter, they would teach it. They would talk about it. They would explain it away just like they explain away everything else. But they are silent because they know what that day means. They know what happens when the cycle is complete. Their silence is an admission. Their evasion is a confession. Their refusal to teach it is them confessing that it has the power to liberate Israel. What you are supposed to do on this seventh day. Now listen, because this is where the teaching becomes personal and immediate for you. Today is the seventh day of unleavened bread. Today is the day when the purification cycle completes. And the question is, are you going to complete that cycle in your own consciousness? Or are you going to let fear and habit pull you back into the old leaven? Because here's the truth that nobody wants to say out loud. Most people do not complete the seventh day. Most people go through days 1 through 6. They do some purging. They remove some of the obvious false doctrine. But then what? They get tired. They get scared. They miss their old beliefs because they were comfortable. They feel isolated because the people around them are still asleep. And so they backslide. They do not complete the cycle. They hang out on day 6 forever, striving and struggling, but never arriving. That is why the false teachers exist. That is exactly what they are designed for, to catch people on day 6 when they are vulnerable and struggling and pull them back into the old leaven. To tell them, you are overthinking this, or just accept the tradition, or do not go too deep into the Torah, or these conspiracy theories are worldly. All of it designed to drag you back. But the Most High is calling something different from you today. He is calling you to complete the seventh day, to not stop on day 6, to push through the resistance and the fear and the social pressure and arrive at the transformation, to let the old self die completely so the new self can live. Here's what that means practically. First, you must make a decision. You must consciously decide that you are not going back to the old leaven. Not the false churches, not the fake pastors, not the corrupted doctrines, not the comfortable lies. You are done. That chapter is closed. Make that decision today and say it out loud. Tell Yah, tell yourself, write it down, make it real. Because decisions are the architecture of transformation. Without a conscious decision, you are just drifting. Second, you must sever the connections that are designed to drag you back. That means the people who are invested in keeping you asleep. That means the environments that reinforce the false doctrine. That means the media and the entertainment and the communities that profit from your confusion. You do not have to be mean about it. You do not have to burn bridges and declare war on every false teacher. But you have to distance yourself from the sources of corruption. You have to stop feeding your spirit the poison that is designed to addict you back to the old system. Third, you must build new foundations. You cannot just destroy the old without replacing it with the new. So you study the Torah for yourself. You learn the real names of the Most High and His Son. You understand the flat earth cosmology and why they hid it. You trace the history of Israel across the earth. You understand your true identity as a scattered Israelite. You read the sealed scrolls and understand what the enemy tried to hide. You build a framework of truth that is so solid and so real that the false teachings cannot shake it anymore. You become a thinker and a warrior instead of a passenger and a sheep. Fourth, you must walk in the consequences of the new foundation. Because here is what nobody tells you. Completing the 7th day of purification means you are no longer compatible with the systems that enslaves you. You cannot sit in church and pretend the false doctrine is okay. You cannot smile and nod when the pastor lies about Israel's identity. You cannot pretend there is no difference between truth and lies. You are transformed. Your consciousness is different, and that difference will be visible to everyone around you. Some people will call you crazy. Some will call you divisive. Some will try to pull you back. But that is the cost of the 7th day. You cannot complete the transformation and then hide it. You become a sign and a wonder to everyone around you, a living testimony to what happens when someone completes the purification cycle and enters the new foundation. Fifth, you must prepare for what comes next, because the Red Sea moment is coming. When enough of Israel completes the 7th day transformation, when our collective consciousness shifts, the systems that enslaved us will try to reclaim us. They will come hard. They will use every weapon they have, but they will fail because you are no longer enslaved. Your mind is no longer colonized. Your spirit is no longer broken. And Yah will drown those systems in the Red Sea, just like He drowned Pharaoh's army. You do not need to be afraid. You just need to be prepared. Know the scriptures. Understand the prophecies. Know who you are. Know what is coming. Stand firm. Do not backslide when the pressure comes. That is all. The prophetic timeline. Why this generation? Now I want to show you why the Most High has chosen this generation to go through this 7th day transformation at a scale we have never seen before. Look at what Yah said through the prophet Hosea about Israel's redemption timeline. Come and let us return unto the Lord, for He hath torn and He will heal us. He hath smitten and He will bind us up. After 2 days will He revive us. In the 3rd day He will raise us up, and we shall live in His sight. Hosea chapter 6, verses 1 through 2. After 2 days will He revive us. In the 3rd day He will raise us up. In the symbolic language of Scripture, a day in this context represents 1,000 years. 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 8. 1 day is with the Lord as 1,000 years. Israel was torn by the scattering. Israel was smitten by captivity and slavery. But after 2,000 years of the diaspora, Yah said He will revive Israel. And in the 3rd period, He will raise her up. Now count the timeline. The Roman diaspora and scattering of Israel began approximately 2,000 years ago, around the 1st century. That means we are now at the end of the 2nd 1,000-year period and entering the 3rd. The 3rd period is when the raising up begins. This generation, right now, this is when Israel's consciousness is supposed to awaken.
This is when the 7-day transformation is supposed to start at a massive scale. This is not accident. This is not coincidence. This is prophecy being executed on the calendar. And do you know what else Yah said through another prophet about this exact generation? It shall come to pass in the last days, saith God, I will pour out of my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. Acts chapter 2, verse 17. Pour out of my spirit upon all flesh, not just the priests, not just the rabbis, not just the institutions, all flesh. Every man, every woman, every young person who seeks the truth will receive revelation directly from the Most High. That is what is happening right now. That is why so many Israelites are waking up. That is why the false teachers are getting desperate, because Yah is bypassing the gatekeepers and giving his people direct access to truth. This generation is the 7th-day generation, the call to complete transformation. Now listen, because I'm about to tell you something that will either liberate you or it will trigger you, depending on whether you are ready for the 7th day or not. The Most High is not asking you to understand this sermon perfectly. He is not asking you to have all the answers. He is not asking you to wait until everything makes sense. He is asking you to complete the cycle. He is asking you to stop striving on day 6 and arrive at day 7. If you are still in the churches, still tithing to false teachers, still accepting false doctrine because it is comfortable, you are not on the 7th day. You are still on day 4 or 5, striving, confused, struggling. The 7th day calls you to leave those places and stand alone if you have to build your own foundation, to study the word for yourself, to trust Yah and not men. If you are aware that the system is corrupt, but you are paralyzed by fear of losing your family, fear of being called crazy, fear of the unknown, you are still on day 6. The 7th day calls you to push through the fear, to make the decision, to sever the connections to the old system. Fear is the last guardian standing between day 6 and day 7. Overcome it. If you understand the truth, but you are not living it, if you know Israel's identity, but you are not declaring it, if you know the feast days matter, but you are not keeping them, you are on day 6, pretending to be on day 7. That is a lie, and Yah sees through it. The 7th day demands action. It demands transformation. It demands you walk different and talk different and build different. The question for you today is simple. Are you completing the 7th day or are you refusing it? Because here is what Yah is about to do, whether you are ready or not. He is going to shake the systems. He is going to expose the lies. He is going to call forth his people. And those who complete the 7th day will stand. Those who do not will be swept away in the chaos that comes when the old system breaks. This is not fear-mongering. This is love. This is the Father telling you the truth so you can prepare. This is the 7th day knocking on your door and asking you to finish what you started. What this generation will witness. Family, before I close this out, I want to tell you what is coming, because Yah has shown me and I cannot stay silent about it. In the next generation, and by next generation, I do not mean far off. I mean the immediate future that some of you listening will witness. The consciousness shift in Israel will become visible to the entire world. It will not be hidden anymore. It will not be whispered in camps and private groups. It will be loud. It will be undeniable. And when that happens, the systems that have enslaved us will make their final play. They will attack us with everything they have. They will use their media to slander us. They will use their governments to oppress us. They will use their religions to condemn us. They will try to destroy the awakening before it becomes irreversible. This is the Red Sea moment coming. This is when Pharaoh's army returns. But Yah has shown me that when that moment comes, he will move. And his movement will be swift and total and devastating to every power that tries to reclaim his people. The ones who completed the 7th day will stand firm. The ones who did not will waver and fall. That is the difference. So the question is not whether you believe this sermon. The question is whether you are ready. Because the calendar does not care what you believe. The feast days will come. The cycles will turn. The 7th day is here. And you either complete it or you do not. Closing call, the 7th day altar. So right now, in this moment, I am calling every person listening to this sermon, whether you have been listening to Yah First Ministries for years, or whether this is your first time hearing Brother Besade Lamed Aleph Lamed break down the truth. I am calling you to make a decision on this 7th day of unleavened bread. If you are still caught in the false churches and false doctrines, if you are still tithing to lying bastards who profit from your confusion, if you are still accepting comfortable lies instead of seeking hard truth, today is your day to leave. Not tomorrow, not after one more Sunday. Today, walk out. Stop feeding the machine that enslaves you. Stop giving money to people who despise you. Stop accepting authority from people who do not have Yah's spirit. Leave those places. If you are aware of the corruption, but you are hiding it, if you know the truth, but you are not declaring it, if you understand Yah's word, but you are not living it, today is your day to stop hiding. Speak the truth, share the sermons, tell your family, tell your friends, tell the people around you. Stop being silent because you are afraid. Fear is the chain that keeps you on day 6. Break it. If you have completed the 7th day already, if you have made the decision to leave the false system and build on truth, if you understand who you are and what is coming, then I am calling you to strengthen what remains. Study deeper, learn more, prepare yourself and your family. And when the chaos comes, when the Red Sea moment arrives, stand firm. Do not waver. Do not go back. Because Yah has chosen you to witness what comes next. The 7th day is here. The transformation is real. The purification cycle is complete. And Israel is waking up, whether the false teachers like it or not. This is Yah First Ministries. This is Brother Besade Lamed Aleph Lamed, breaking down the 7th day that nobody wants to talk about because it breaks the entire system of control. Share this episode. Study these scriptures on your own. Do not just take my word for it. Go into the Torah and verify this yourself. Build your own foundation. And when people ask you what you believe, tell them the truth. Yah bless you and keep you on this 7th day and beyond. We will be back with more truth on the next broadcast. Peace to the true Israel scattered across the earth.